Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to, let's see, it is Tuesday, February the 28th. This is the Tuesday, February the 28th edition of the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Skripler, your reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And for this episode, we're going to focus in on the wave situation, primarily for the Outer Banks, and talk a little bit about weather. Not as much climate discussion as we've had over the past few days, which is fine because we're looking at a pretty good wave event for the Outer Banks. Nothing too crazy, but a good wave event overall for the next, 3 to 4 days as a storm system moves off the US East Coast and begins to provide a nice swell from the east, and as calm conditions for the most part are expected to preside over the Outer Banks, enabling for some nice, clean, and glassy periods. And right now I'm looking at the NOAA GeoColor composite, and we can see the storm systems off to the north for most of the northern US here. And here in the Outer Banks, we have clear to partly cloudy skies. Some locations still experiencing some strong winds. We had a front move in last night with some strong winds, gale force winds to the south, near gale force winds to the north, these winds coming in from the southwest. And that has kicked up a strong southerly swell here for the south facing beaches. And for the north facing beaches, most of the waves are in the range of about 1 to 2 feet right now. So pretty small waves, pretty calm conditions starting to take hold. We could have some good waves on the coastline today, although small waves or more smaller waves are expected today. And then as we get into the day tomorrow, the storm off the coast is expected to start to push that swell onshore, and the waves are expected to kick up into the 3, 4, 5, possibly even 6 foot range for some of the east-facing beaches. So good waves on the way, and it's worth noting that the smaller waves today are likely to at least be rideable in certain locations. And I've seen wave reports from some monitors saying that the waves are better, but looking at the cameras down at the piers, it does seem that the waves right now are relatively small in the range of about 1 to 2 foot. Um, in any case, looking at the National Weather Service radar, we still have the severe weather out in California with another impulse coming off the Pacific Ocean. This one mainly aiming at central and northern California, as well as parts of Washington and Oregon. But the primary feature of that severe weather is going to be central California rains and mountain snows. A lot of blizzard type conditions out west, particularly here in the mountains of California. And then we've got some weather in the northeast in association with a storm system that's moving offshore, along with some gale warnings for parts of Maine and Massachusetts. And here we've on the East Coast, in the Outer Banks, we've got some remnant small craft advisories that'll probably go down as the day progresses, and unless there's some concern about the swell coming in from the east. All right, and looking at the predictions for stormy weather over the next 7 days, we do expect to see a continuation of stormy conditions for Central California on northward for the US West Coast, and stormy conditions for the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys, focusing on Kentucky, Arkansas, and Missouri. And then in the near offshore environment, a tendency for nor'easters to develop offshore. Getting down to the coastlines for some local observations, we're going to use our Google Maps for informational purposes. And we're going to start off at Jeanette's Pier for this morning, where the wave heights right now are in the range of about 1 to 2 foot. We do have a southerly swell that is not really wrapping around very well. at Jeanette's Pier. So the primary swell right now is still coming in from the east, and that has been knocked down by the strong winds overnight. So right now, waves are in the range of 1 to 2 foot at Jeanette's Pier. The primary swell coming in out of the east at 12 seconds, secondary swell 19 seconds. Winds out of the west at 13 miles per hour, which is pretty light offshore wind. Air temperatures 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and worth noting that present weather conditions right there at Jeanette's Pier are kind of foggy. It looks like there's actually a relatively decent bank of fog right there right now, which hopefully will burn off by afternoon. Ocean water temperatures in the range of 51 to 53 degrees, depending on your monitoring station. And the forecast for today is sunny with an expected high of 65. So hopefully that fog will burn off and we'll get some nice waves, if small waves, at Jeanette's Pier for today. And then heading on down south to Rodanthe, we also find that waves are in the range of 1 to 2 foot. And I'm just going to have to put a little note here that the waves from the monitors are coming in a little bit taller down at Rodanthe, more in the 1.6 foot range for the primary swell coming out of the east at 12 seconds. Secondary swell is more pronounced for Rodanthe at 9 seconds from the south. Winds are out of the west at 16 miles per hour. That is an offshore flow. Air temperatures right now 59 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't see any indicators of fog down there at Rodanthe. It's mainly for the beaches up in Nag's Head. Ocean water temperatures warmer at 58 degrees Fahrenheit, warming up to near 60 degrees down there. Let's hope that trend continues and that the warmer waters progress on northward as we start to get into March. The forecast for today is sunny with an expected high of 62 degrees. A lot more ocean and sound influence there at Rodanthe, tending to moderate the weather forecast for temperatures. And then for our third location, I'm going to just pick Hatteras Beach here on Hatteras Island. And right now the waves are in the range of 1 to 2 foot. I've got an asterisk beside that because we do have a southerly swell coming in that's quite a bit taller, but the primary swell is at 12 seconds and 1.7 feet, and that's where you're getting that 1 to 2 foot range. The south swell, which is coming in out of due south, is about 5 feet, and I don't know if that's wrapping around at all, but that is a much larger swell, which is why I've got that asterisk up. Winds right now are relatively strong, 18 miles per hour out of the west. That's an offshore flow. The winds are expected to die down throughout the day, though, down there in Hatteras. Air temperatures 61 degrees Fahrenheit right now. Ocean water temperatures 64 degrees, so rather warmer down there in Hatteras. Weather conditions today are expected to be partly cloudy with a high of 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And that does round up our observations, our 3 observations, but I did want to just let you know that the south-facing beaches are getting quite a bit more in the way of waves as far as wave heights go. So for example, right now, Billy Mitchell, there's a primary swell coming in out of the south at around 7 feet that may just be lining up with the shore. This in association with a remnant swell from the strong gale force winds that were blowing from the south and west last night. These winds have since died down, but you do have that remnant swell down there at Billy Mitchell. And this is definitely something that's worth noting as we provide for you the present wave observations. Now, looking at the 2-week temperature outlook and precipitation outlook, the center of the warmth keeps sinking further and further to the south, and it looks like the above average temperatures are going to be relegated to the Gulf Coast region with near normal temperatures expected for the Outer Banks. And it's also worth noting that cooler than normal temperatures seem to be moving a little bit more to the north here in the western region, but cooler than normal temperatures expected to dominate for parts of Montana particularly, and then parts of the Pacific Northwest as well. Precipitation is expected to be above normal for most of the U.S. Looks like a pretty stormy pattern. I did also want to note that Alaska is expected to see above normal temperatures with a bit of a warm air invasion of the Arctic through the Bering Sea there, and above normal precipitation in the northern regions of Alaska. All right, looking at the convective outlooks, it does appear that we're going to have some stormy weather in the Mississippi River Valley region and westward for the 48 to 72 hour time frame, including areas of Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Mississippi and Alabama, depending on your day. So please stay alert to severe weather if you are in those regions. Looking at the global forecast system model, we do have that low pressure system offshore, which is the main wave making event for the next day or two. As this system is expected to head on offshore, the northeasterly flow is expected to pump up the swell and push in a nice swell from the east for the east-facing beaches. And out west, of course, worth mentioning that the severe weather does continue with the continued influx of storm systems off the front side of a high pressure system that has parked itself out in the Pacific and generated this very persistent trough on its east facing side. High pressure system out there has been very strong, very powerful influence on Western weather. All right, let's go ahead and advance the model so we can see what's going to happen. So the storm system in the east heads offshore, providing that northeasterly wind on the backside and the northeasterly swell on the backside as we get into the day on Wednesday. And this is going to really pump up the swell on Wednesday. Note that calmer conditions are expected to prevail on Wednesday, although right now it does look like the temperature forecasts are a little bit cooler, aiming more into the upper 50s as opposed to the 60s for today. And then as we get into the day on Thursday and Friday, rainier conditions are expected, but with warmer conditions as well, as a warm front begins to move in from the Gulf. And this one coming in from the south and west. And so we get a little bit of coastal influence here on Thursday with this warm front, but most of the severe weather focusing to the west of us. And then as we get later into the day on Thursday, some of the severe weather or heavier weather does seem to head on out toward the Outer Banks. And we get another impulse moving offshore, and what appears to be also a second set of waves coming on the backside of another front moving offshore on Friday, and then a major severe weather event for the Mississippi River Valley region on Friday heads on up to the north and drags a front behind it. And again, we get that backside of the front with the low pressure system and what looks like another swell that's likely to be generated by Saturday. And yeah, I told you I was going to talk a lot about waves. So we're gonna look at the wave models and put them into context based on the weather that we've just looked at. So right now we've got a prevailing swell in the near offshore environment coming from the south and from the southwest. This in association with the gale that kicked up yesterday, which was itself in association with a front that swept through. So in the near offshore environment for the south facing beaches, we've got wave heights in the range of 6 to 7, maybe even 7.5 feet. And then in the near offshore environment for the north facing beaches, I'm sorry, for the east facing beaches, we've got wave heights in the range of 4 to 6 feet, depending on the location. Now, most of these waves are heading from south to north and aren't really wrapping around to the coastline. Behind the low pressure system that is offshore, we can see the beginning of a east to west swell propagating. This one heading toward New Jersey right now. I'm going to go ahead and advance the model so that you guys can see how this swell orientation changes throughout the day. So as those northeasterly winds blow in behind the storm system that is offshore, you have the swell that is very nice creeping down the coastline. So this is about the 1 o'clock hour. And then as we get into the 4 o'clock hour, you can see these swells coming in from the east, starting to get relatively close to the coastline. And then by 6 o'clock, we've got the swell beginning to get in the near offshore environment for the Outer Banks, getting closer by 10 o'clock. And then by 1 a.m. on Wednesday, the swell is predominant from the north and east at 4.5 to 5 feet for the east facing beaches. And then as we get into the day on Wednesday, so say by 10 a.m. Wednesday, we have a very solid swell coming in from the east and the northeast at 5 to 7 feet for the east facing beaches. And this swell is expected to line up pretty nicely. For example, at Jeanette's Pier, we could see wave heights in the range of 4, 5, maybe even 6 feet, depending on the time of day. And this will tend to be the case for most of the east facing beaches on Wednesday. Those temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler, but I believe the winds are going to be pretty calm. Yeah, so according to the global forecast system model, winds are expected to be very calm in the range of about, looks like about 9 to 12 miles per hour, just a gentle wind coming in off the ocean by I'm sorry, by Wednesday morning. Just so overall, looking like a really very good day for surf, particularly for the east-facing beaches on Wednesday. Now, as we get into the day, yep, 10 o'clock. Let's just go ahead and advance this model by one day. And we can see that even on Thursday, still by the morning time, the swell is still hanging around. So we still got a 4 to 6 foot swell, even though the link with the storm system's way offshore at this point. But there is this nice remnant swell early in the day on Thursday. And then this swell does slowly uh, die down just a little bit as we get into the afternoon, evening hours, but it has this nice persistence. So even though it might drop down by about a half foot by the time you get into the afternoon, it's still solidly in the 4 to 5 foot range by afternoon on Thursday. And then you can see by late Thursday the influence of the front here with this south and west swell. So the swell coming in from the south and west, moving up to the north here, and starting to impact the south-facing beaches here for Ocracoke particularly, with a southwest swell coming in at around 5 feet. This front is going to be the main feature for Friday, and so I'm just going to go ahead and advance this one slowly to get into Friday. So what's going to happen is the front heads offshore, and then you get those winds behind the front coming in from the north, and so you don't really get as much of a southerly flow in the Outer Banks region. You mainly get this northerly flow. And once again, the swell is just very nice coming in out of the east and the northeast in the range of 3 to 4.5 feet by dawn on Friday. And then as the front gets offshore, you get a little bit of a low pressure that starts to develop offshore that helps to generate this swell that's coming in from the east. Now, it is worth noting that this front does generate a swell coming from the south for the south-facing beaches, the swell in the range of 6 to 7 feet. But the swell gets up to about Avon for the south side. And then for the east-facing beaches, this by afternoon on Friday, we're still getting that easterly flow for the swell and likely a northerly flow for the winds. Actually, let's look at the winds. Nope, I'm wrong. Okay, so we've got that swell there at the base. We've got southwesterly winds actually relatively strong, so probably pretty choppy here at this point. But what's happening is that there's this nice base swell that's kind of fighting against the stronger winds by later in the afternoon. So you got that large front. But what's going to happen with this storm system is it's going to head on offshore. And again, apparently, according to the wave models, provide this nice swell coming in from the northeast. And you can even see the divergence in the wind pattern. I'm just going to back this up so you can see the march of the wind pattern. So this is what's happening early in the day on Friday. We've got like an easterly wind field, and that's going to create that base swell. Easterly winds starting out early in the day on Friday in the range of about 16 miles per hour offshore at Jeanette's Pier. And you get that predominant wind pattern, which does create that nice easterly swell. And this running in through about the noontime hour with this easterly wind pattern maintaining in the range of about 10 to 20 miles per hour, which is not too crazy. As you get in later in the day, the chop is likely to increase as you get those strong southwesterly winds chopping into the swell coming in from the east, that remnant swell. And then the strong winds sweep across the region by the evening time. This looks like a gale or near gale condition. And then a strong low pressure system heads offshore off of New Jersey and brings in the northeasterly and northerly winds right behind it. First, here in the Outer Banks, the wind pattern is west, but then it just shifts off to the north and east and is relatively calm with a kind of a big wave maker out here just off the US East Coast with those gale force winds. And so as we get into the day, this is on Saturday, um, and let's just actually go back just a little bit. So into the afternoon on Saturday actually looks pretty good here from a wind picture. And let's look at the ocean. Oop, it's not going to give me an ocean. Okay. Um, let's see how far back we can go for ocean. Oh, hold on. Okay, so at 1 o'clock, we've got the swell coming in from the south, and then yeah, I think we're gonna have to wait until Sunday until we get the swell coming in from the north and east with that system. But nonetheless, we've got like a long period of time where we're going to experience this nice swell coming in from the east and the northeast. Looks like later today, Wednesday, Thursday, and early in the day on Friday. And then we got another storm system coming in, bringing in like gale force winds from the south and west, and which will chop up the waves. But we'll have some large waves, large swells coming in from the south on Saturday, it looks like. And then as we get into the day on Sunday, it does look like we get more more of a swell coming in from the north and east. So it does look like the waves are expected to be very good over the coming week, and that this trend will tend to continue as we get into the weekend and as we get into next week. And this based on the storm systems and the way the storm systems are expected to orient off the US East Coast. Um, and just overall, the wave model's looking pretty darn good. So hopefully these wave model predictions are correct. I do want to last of all show you the massive propagation of waves here in the central Atlantic. We've just got this huge field of large significant wave heights sweeping across the North Atlantic and parts of Europe. So right off Portugal, we've got 13-foot significant wave heights. Off France, we've got 7.5-foot significant wave heights, and off of Ireland, we've got 10-foot significant wave heights. There's been just a barrage of storms running up through the North Atlantic here that have been pumping out this really nice surf for parts of Western Europe. And big wave event right now, south and east of Newfoundland with significant wave heights in the range of 39 feet is just the most recent in a battery of storms, just pumping up some serious swell in the central North Atlantic. So I did want to show you guys that. But for the Outer Banks, waves look good over the next 3 days at least. And then as we get into the weekend, I'm thinking Sunday might look pretty darn good as well. So based on the model observations. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX wave report. We're going to get down to the coastline, try and get some video from the water for you guys. At the very least, if we don't do that, we'll get a coastal observation. And I'm really stoked about the potential for good waves this week, particularly like glassy waves. It just could be a fun week with 3, 4, 5 foot surf for Wednesday, Thursday, parts of Friday, and then I mean some larger waves certainly. In some locations, we might even see 6 foot waves break in certain areas. So we'll just have to keep an eye on things. But nonetheless, likely some beautiful surf conditions coming up. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. And as I always do at the end, I'd just like to ask you to please do everything you can to help save our coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. The primary actions right now that we can take is the rapid deployment of clean energy in the form of wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles. And we can do this. It's a choice that we can make as a civilization to turn away from the harmful fossil fuels and to do the things that are going to be helpful for all of us. And I've got faith. I've got faith in making the good choices, and I have faith that we will do this, that we will have the resolve to do this. So thank you for joining me again.